They say your breaking point comes without warning. One moment you're standing in a conference room with your life's work in your hands, feeling cautiously hopeful. The next moment, it's shattered on the floor, literally and figuratively. And somehow, in that exact moment of humiliation, someone sees the real you. Someone sees your value. That someone changed everything for me. Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Sarah, and what I'm about to share with you is about more than just a job or a career decision. It's about what happens when you finally realize your worth, and what it takes to fight for it. Before I begin, I want to know, where are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? I just want to know I'm not alone in this moment. And if what you hear today resonates with you, if you've ever felt undervalued, undermined, or invisible in your own workplace, please consider subscribing. There are so many of us with these stories, and I believe they matter. Now, let me tell you what really happened. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a product designer. I say that now with confidence, but there was a time, not so long ago, when I could barely say it without qualifying it, apologizing for it, or minimizing it somehow. I'd been working at Innovate Labs for 5 years when this story begins. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, of ideas pitched in meetings that somehow became Derek's vision by the time they were presented to clients. 5 years of watching less experienced designers get promotions while I stayed in the same role, with the same salary, doing the same thing over and over. My manager's name was Derek Vance. He was the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately make you feel like you'd done something wrong, even if you hadn't. Tall, always in an expensive suit, with this smile that never quite reached his eyes. He had a way of making you feel small, not through outright cruelty, but through 1,000 tiny cuts. A dismissive comment here, taking credit there, overlooking your accomplishments, highlighting your mistakes. I told myself I was being oversensitive. That's what we do, isn't it? We minimize our own pain to make room for everyone else's comfort. But then came the prototype. For 8 months, I'd been working on something revolutionary, a user interface design that solved a problem no one else in the industry had managed to crack. I stayed late. I came in early. I filled 3 notebooks with sketches, ran dozens of user tests, iterated endlessly. This wasn't just work for me. This was proof. Proof that I deserved more than I was being given. The client was Victoria Chen, the CEO of a massive tech company called NextGen Systems. She was a woman I admired from afar, someone who'd built her company from nothing and wasn't afraid to take risks. When Derek told me we'd landed the pitch meeting with her, something inside me shifted. This was my moment. This was going to change things. Derek scheduled the presentation for a Tuesday at 2 p.m. I remember because I wore my lucky blazer that day, the navy one my mother had bought me years ago, before everything got complicated between us. I remember thinking, this is it, Sarah. This is when things turn around. I was so naive. I arrived at the conference room early, setting up the prototype on the polished mahogany table. It was beautiful, sleek, intuitive. Everything I'd envisioned. Victoria arrived with her team, and I could see the curiosity in her eyes. This was good. This was going to be good. Derek walked in last, carrying his leather portfolio. He didn't look at me. He never really did, unless he was about to disappoint me. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. Derek began, his voice smooth and confident. I've put together an exceptional team to tackle NextGen's design challenge, and what we're about to show you represents months of innovative thinking. My months. My innovative thinking. But I stayed silent. I always did. Derek reached for the prototype, my prototype, and held it up like he was about to present it to the room. And then something shifted in his expression. Something ugly flickered across his face. I'll never know exactly what triggered it. Maybe he was worried about something. Maybe he'd had a bad morning. Maybe he was threatened by the quality of the work, by the fact that even he could see how good it was. What I do know is that in the next second, he raised his hand above his head, and before anyone could move or speak, he brought it down hard against the edge of the conference table. The prototype shattered. Pieces flew across the room. I watched, frozen, as 8 months of work broke apart in front of my eyes, in front of her eyes. This is garbage, Derek said, his voice cold and loud. This is exactly the kind of mediocre thinking that gets companies nowhere. We'll start over with a real team. Someone from the outside. Someone who actually understands innovation. The room went silent. Victoria's face shifted from shock to something harder, something like anger, but also calculation. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands were shaking, and I could feel tears burning the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. And then Victoria turned to me. She looked directly at me, ignoring Derek completely. "Can I have your contact?" she asked quietly. My heart was thundering in my chest. This was a test. This moment was a test of everything I'd become. Everything I'd allowed myself to be diminished into. Derek was watching me. I could feel the warning in his gaze, the implicit threat. "Don't do this. Don't embarrass me. Don't step out of line." My hands were still shaking when I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out my business card. I handed it to Victoria. "Thank you," she said, and there was something in her voice, something like respect, or maybe recognition. "I'll be in touch." She and her team left the room. Derek didn't say anything to me. He just left too, stepping over the broken pieces of my prototype like they were nothing. I stood alone in that conference room for a long time, staring at the fragments on the floor. I thought that was the end of my story. I thought that was the moment I'd failed. I had no idea it was actually the beginning. 3 days passed after the conference room incident, and I didn't hear from Victoria Chen. I know that doesn't sound like much. 3 days. But when you're waiting for someone to potentially change your life, 3 days feels like 3 years. I checked my phone constantly. I refreshed my email every 5 minutes. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that she'd probably already forgotten about me. That handing her my card was just a polite gesture, a moment of sympathy from someone who felt bad about what happened. At night, I replayed the moment over and over. Derek smashing the prototype, the sound it made, the way he said garbage, the way he said, "Real team?" Like I was somehow not real, not worthy, not enough. I went to work on Wednesday and Thursday like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Derek avoided me. He didn't make eye contact in meetings. He didn't assign me any new projects. It was like I'd become invisible. Except my invisibility now came with a weight to it. The weight of someone he decided was a liability. My colleague Marcus noticed something was wrong. Marcus and I had worked together for 3 years. He was one of the few people at Innovate Labs who treated me like an actual human being instead of a resource to be managed. What happened in that meeting with Derek? He asked me on Thursday afternoon. We were getting coffee from the break room. Terrible coffee. The kind that tastes like it was brewed in 2003 and never cleaned out since. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say, he destroyed my work in front of a client, Marcus. He destroyed 8 months of my life and called it garbage. But instead I just shrugged. "Just a bad pitch," I said. Client wasn't interested. Marcus studied my face for a moment like he was trying to read something written in invisible ink. "That's not what I heard," he said quietly. "I heard Derek destroyed something and blamed it on mediocrity. I didn't ask him how he knew. The office gossip mill at Innovate Labs was faster than any email chain. By now, probably everyone knew what had happened. They probably thought I was pathetic. They probably thought Derek was right. It doesn't matter," I said, but my voice cracked a little on the word, matter. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. "It matters," he said. "Don't let him make you smaller than you are, Sarah." That night I cried. I sat in my apartment. A small one, bedroom in a building that always smelled faintly of other people's cooking. And I let myself fall apart. I cried for the prototype. I cried for the years I'd spent making myself smaller, quieter, more palatable. I cried because I was 32 years old, and I still didn't know how to stand up for myself without feeling like I was doing something wrong. My phone sat on the coffee table next to me, dark and silent. Friday morning I woke up before my alarm. It was 5:47 a.m., and I couldn't sleep anymore. I lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, and then I reached for my phone. There was an email. My heart stopped. The subject line read, "Interested in a conversation." The sender was Victoria Chen herself. I must have read that email 20 times before my brain actually processed the words. She wanted to schedule a call. She wanted to talk to me, not Derek. Me. "Hi, Sarah. I was impressed by your work on that prototype, and more importantly, I was impressed by your composure in a difficult situation. I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. Are you available for a call this afternoon?" VC, an opportunity. Those 2 words changed everything. I called Victoria at 3 p.m. that Friday. I was in my car, parked in a quiet lot away from the office, because I couldn't do this somewhere Derek might overhear. "Sarah," Victoria said when she picked up. Her voice was warm but direct, like someone who doesn't waste time with unnecessary pleasantries. "Thank you for calling back so quickly." "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Thank you for reaching out. I want to be honest with you," she continued. That display at your office wasn't about the prototype. I could tell that prototype was exceptional. What I saw was a manager who was threatened by someone talented, and rather than nurture that talent, he tried to destroy it. I've seen that behavior before. And I never hire people who manage that way. I didn't know what to say. In all my years at Innovate Labs, no one had ever defended my work to me like this. No one had ever seen what I saw, that the prototype wasn't just good, it was genuinely innovative. I'm rebuilding my design division at NextGen, Victoria said. I need people who are brilliant, resilient, and brave enough to take risks. Based on what I saw in that conference room, and based on that prototype, I think you might be that person. I'd like to offer you a position. Lead designer for our user experience division. The salary is significantly higher than what you're making now. You'd have your own team, and you'd have creative control over all our major design initiatives. I think I stopped breathing. I know this is sudden, Victoria said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Take some time to think about it. But I want you to know something, Sarah, you deserve to be valued. You deserve to be trusted with important work. And you deserve a manager who sees your talent instead of feeling threatened by it. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I thought about Derek. I thought about the 5 years I'd spent being small. I thought about the prototype, and what it meant that someone like Victoria Chen saw it as exceptional. And I thought about what it would mean to say yes. I knew Derek would be furious. I knew there would be consequences. I knew that leaving wouldn't be simple or easy or uncomplicated. But I also knew that I couldn't go back to being invisible. Not now. Not after someone had finally seen me. That night, I called Victoria back. I'd like to accept, I said. I didn't tell Derek immediately. I know that sounds cowardly, but I needed time to process what was happening, to make sure this was real before I blew up my entire professional life. I spent the weekend in a daze. I accepted Victoria's formal offer on Saturday morning. By Sunday evening, I had a signed contract sitting in my inbox. It was happening. It was actually happening. Monday morning, I walked into Innovate Labs like it was any other day. Except it wasn't. I was a ghost in that building now, except I was the only one who knew it yet. Derek was in his office with the door open. He was on a call, his feet propped up on his desk, looking completely at ease. That's when the anger hit me, not the hot, immediate kind, but the cold, clear kind that comes from finally seeing someone for exactly what they are. He was comfortable. He was comfortable because he thought I'd broken. He thought the shattered prototype had shattered me too. I waited until he got off the call. Then I knocked on his doorframe. "Got a minute?" I asked. He looked up, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, that I was even speaking to him. Or maybe he was just annoyed at the interruption. "Make it quick," he said. "I have back-to-back meetings." I closed the door behind me and sat down in the chair across from his desk without being invited. I watched him register this small act of rebellion, and I saw his jaw tighten. "I'm resigning," I said. My voice was calm. Effective immediately. "I'm taking a position as lead designer at NextGen Systems." For a moment, Derek just stared at me. Then he laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You're what?" he said. "Sarah, you can't be serious. NextGen? You think Victoria Chen is going to hire you based on one broken prototype? You think you're ready for a leadership role?" "I don't think," I said quietly. "I know. She saw my work, Derek. She saw what I could do. And she saw what you did to try to stop me from doing it." Derek's face went red. He stood up, and for a second, I thought he might physically hurt me. Instead, he pointed at the door. My first day at NextGen Systems was a Monday. I arrived 45 minutes early, which is unlike me. I'm usually the person running 5 minutes late, apologizing profusely, feeling terrible about it. But this was different. This was my shot, and I wasn't going to waste it. Victoria met me in the lobby with a cup of coffee already in her hand. She'd somehow remembered that I took it black with 1 sugar. "Welcome," she said, handing it to me. "Ready to change some things." I smiled, but inside, my stomach was churning with nerves. The design division occupied the entire 3rd floor of NextGen's building. It was nothing like Innovate Labs. The space was open, bright, filled with natural light. There were whiteboards everywhere, sketches pinned to walls, evidence of actual creative thinking happening. I could feel the energy the moment I walked in. Victoria introduced me to the team, 12 designers of varying experience levels. Some looked excited to see me. Others looked skeptical. I didn't blame them. I was the new person brought in from outside, being handed leadership over people who'd been waiting for their own promotion for years. The first designer to approach me was a man named Thomas. He was in his late 40s, with silver streaking his dark hair, and he had the look of someone who'd been passed over for promotions before. "So you're the one who's supposed to fix everything," he said, and his tone wasn't quite hostile, but it was close. "I'm not here to fix everything," I said honestly. "I'm here to do good work and help you all do better work." "That's it. Derek Vance's company sends their people here pretty regularly," Thomas said, watching my face carefully. "Never anyone like you before." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Someone willing to actually listen," he said, and then he walked away before I could respond. The first week was overwhelming. Victoria had me sit in on all the current projects. There were 4 major ones running simultaneously. I listened more than I talked. I asked questions. I watched how the team interacted with each other, who deferred to whom, who had ideas but were afraid to voice them. What I noticed was that the design division had talent, but it was being held back by bureaucracy, by unclear vision, and by a former leader who'd been more focused on keeping everyone in line than on letting them create. On Friday of that first week, Victoria called me into her office. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "It's a lot," I admitted, "but I'm learning. The team is strong, but they seem cautious." Victoria nodded. "They've been burned before. The previous head of design was a lot like Derek, more interested in control than collaboration. I fired him 2 months ago because I realized I was losing the best talent. People were leaving, and I couldn't figure out why until I started actually listening to them." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "I want you to know something, Sarah. I didn't hire you just because you're talented, though you are. I hired you because I saw something in that conference room that I value more than talent. I saw someone who, when faced with public humiliation, stayed composed. I saw someone who, when offered a lifeline, had the courage to take it. That tells me you're the kind of person who doesn't give up, and you don't let other people's insecurity become your problem." I felt tears prickling the back of my eyes, but I blinked them away. "There's something I need to tell you," Victoria continued. "Derek Vance called me yesterday. He said you were manipulative, that you'd stolen credit for his work, that you were trying to sabotage Innovate Labs by leaving. He asked me to fire you." My heart sank. Of course he did. This was exactly the kind of thing Derek would do. "What did you tell him?" I asked quietly. I told him that I'd heard enough from him 5 years ago when he was taking credit for someone else's prototype, Victoria said calmly. "And I told him that if he ever called my office again, I'd be contacting his HR department about the workplace culture he's created." I blinked. "You didn't have to do that?" "Yes, I did," Victoria said firmly, "because that's what managers are supposed to do. They're supposed to protect and advocate for their people. Derek never did that for you. I intend to." That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mother. We had a complicated relationship. She'd sacrificed a lot for me growing up, and I'd always felt like I owed her something I could never quite pay back. Our conversations were usually strained, full of unspoken resentments and obligations. "Hey, Mom," I said when she answered. "Sarah, is everything okay?" Her voice shifted into that worried mother register.
"Actually, yes,"
I said. "Everything is better than okay. I got a new job. Better position, better pay, better company. I just wanted to tell you." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," she said, and I could hear something genuine in her voice. Relief, maybe. Pride. "I'm proud of you," she added, and those 4 words did something to me. Free, they cracked something open that had been locked up for a long time. "Thanks, Mom," I said, and I meant it. The second week at NextGen, I called my first team meeting. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, the one with huge windows overlooking the city skyline. "I know I'm new," I started, "and I know you're probably wondering if I'm going to be another version of the last guy. I'm not. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe that you know your work better than I do. My job is to clear obstacles, get you resources, and create an environment where you can do your best thinking. In return, I need you to bring your real ideas to the table. Not the safe ideas, not the ideas you think I want to hear. The ideas that actually excite you." I paused and looked around the room. "And if anyone ever treats you the way you've been treated before, if anyone ever makes you feel small, or takes credit for your work, or makes you doubt your talent, you come tell me immediately. Because that stops here." Thomas raised his hand. "What if you're the one making us feel small?" he asked, and there was a challenge in his voice. "Then someone needs to tell me," I said. "And I need to listen and change." I'm going to make mistakes. I'm probably going to make them pretty soon. But I'm not going to be defensive about it. My job is to be better than that. Thomas studied me for a moment, and then he nodded slightly. It wasn't approval exactly, but it was openness. It was a willingness to see. That Friday, Thomas brought me a design concept he'd been working on. It was brilliant, a completely new approach to one of our major projects. But he looked nervous presenting it. "This is incredible," I said when he finished. "Thomas, this is exactly the kind of thinking we need. Why wasn't this being developed before?" "Because the last guy said it was too risky," Thomas said quietly. "He wanted to stick with what was already working." "Well, I'm not that guy," I said. "Let's develop this. Let's test it with users. Let's make this real." Thomas's face changed. I could see the moment something shifted for him, the moment he realized that maybe, just maybe, this was going to be different. My first day at NextGen Systems was a Monday. I wore the same navy blazer I'd worn to Derek's office, the one I now thought of as my lucky blazer, even though luck had nothing to do with what happened next. Victoria met me at the entrance of the building. NextGen's headquarters was modern and sleek, all glass and natural light, so different from the cramped cubicles and fluorescent hum of Innovate Labs. Just walking through those doors felt like stepping into a different life. "Welcome," Victoria said, shaking my hand. She was exactly as I remembered, confident, direct with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. "Are you ready?" "I have no idea what I'm doing," I said honestly. "But I'm ready to learn," she smiled. "That's the right answer. Come on, I want you to meet your team." My team. Those words still felt surreal. The design division at NextGen was smaller than I expected, 6 designers plus me. Victoria introduced me to each one. Marcus, not my Marcus, a different Marcus, Sarah Zironic Inob, Dishan Priya, James, and Yuki. They looked at me with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. I was the new person. I was the outsider brought in to lead them. I had to earn their trust. "I know I'm coming in as someone you don't know," I told them in our first team meeting that morning. "I know that might feel strange or even unfair. But I want to be honest with you. I've spent 5 years at my previous company being undervalued and overlooked. I've watched talented people get credit stolen from them. I've seen managers prioritize their own egos over their team's growth. I'm not going to do that here. I'm here to make space for your ideas, to fight for your work, and to help you become the best designers you can be. But I need you to trust me, and I need you to be honest with me. If I'm making mistakes, tell me. If you need support, ask. If you have ideas, share them." There was a long silence. Then Yuki, the quietest member of the team, raised her hand. "What if our ideas are bad?" she asked. "Then we'll figure out how to make them better together," I said. "Bad ideas are just ideas that need more work. The only real failure is not trying at all." I saw something shift in the room. Not quite trust yet, but the beginning of openness. The first week was overwhelming. I had to learn NextGen Systems, understand their product pipeline, meet with different departments, free and figure out how to actually lead people who'd been doing this work before I arrived. There were moments when I felt completely out of my depth. There were moments when I questioned whether Victoria had made a terrible mistake. But there were also moments of clarity. On Wednesday, I was in a meeting with the engineering team and the product managers, and they were discussing a user flow that didn't make sense to me. It was overcomplicated, with too many steps, too many decision points. A user would get lost halfway through. I raised my hand. "Can I ask a question?" I said. "Why are there 7 different screens for something that could be accomplished in 3? The head of engineering, a man named Robert, looked annoyed. "Because that's what the product requirements specified," he said tersely. "But is that what users actually need?" I pressed. "Or is that what we think they need?" Victoria was watching me from across the table. Her expression didn't change, but I could feel her attention sharpen. "We did user testing," Robert said. "This is what came out of it." "Can I see the testing data?" I asked. "I'd like to understand the methodology." They showed it to me, and within an hour, I'd identified the flaw in their approach. The testing had been done with people who already understood the product. They'd never tested with new users who had no context. The overcomplicated flow made sense to people who already knew what they were looking for, but it would confuse anyone new. I laid out a redesign right there in the meeting. 3 screens instead of 7. A clear, intuitive flow. A pathway that actually made sense. The room went quiet. "Can you prototype that by Friday?" Robert asked. "Yes," I said. Even though I wasn't entirely sure I could, I worked Thursday and Friday with my team, and we built that prototype. When we presented it on Friday afternoon, the response was immediate and positive. Robert actually nodded, a small gesture, but it meant he respected the work. More importantly, Victoria pulled me aside after the meeting. "That was impressive," she said. "How did you see the problem so quickly?" "I've spent a lot of time watching users interact with products," I said. "Most of the time, they don't move the way we expect them to. They get confused. They give up. We blame them, but really, we didn't design for them. We designed for some idealized version of them." Victoria studied me for a moment. "That's exactly the kind of thinking I need here," she said. "Keep doing that." By the end of my first week, something had shifted. The skepticism I'd felt from my team was starting to transform into something else. Respect maybe, or at least the beginning of it. On Friday evening, Priya invited me to get drinks with some of the team. We went to a bar near the office, and for the first time, I felt like I was actually part of something. They asked me questions about my work at Innovate Labs. I told them carefully edited versions of the truth. Nothing that threw Derek completely under the bus, but nothing that pretended he was a good manager either. "Sounds like you had a Derek," Deshawn said knowingly. "Every company has one. The manager who's more interested in protecting their reputation than developing their people." "I'm just glad I got out," I said. "You did more than get out," Sarah said. "You built yourself an exit. That takes guts." That night, driving home, I thought about how different this felt from my last job. At Innovate Labs, I'd been constantly anxious, always wondering if I was good enough, always second, guessing myself. Here I was still anxious, but it was the good kind of anxious. The kind that comes from being challenged and rising to meet the challenge. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in my car for a moment, just breathing. I thought about Derek sitting in his office at Innovate Labs, probably telling people that I'd failed, that I'd made a terrible mistake. I pulled out my phone and drafted an email to Victoria. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I'm going to make this worth your faith." "Sarah," I almost deleted it. It seemed too vulnerable, too earnest. But then I thought about something Victoria had said to me in the conference room. "You deserve to be valued." I hit send. It's been 2 years since I handed Victoria Chen my business card in that conference room. 2 years since the prototype broke. 2 years since I decided I was worth more than Derek's cruelty. 2 years of building something I'm genuinely proud of. NextGen's new product line, the one I led the design for, launched 6 months ago. It's been a commercial and critical success. The user interface won 3 industry design awards. The product itself increased NextGen's market share by 18% in the first quarter. And more importantly, it solved real problems for real people. That matters to me more than any award ever could. But this story isn't really about business success. It's about what happens when you finally decide that you're worth fighting for. When I first joined NextGen, I was terrified. Not just of failing, but of being found out, of someone discovering that I wasn't actually as talented as Victoria seemed to think I was. That imposter syndrome followed me for months. Every time something went well, I attributed it to luck or help from my team. Every time something went wrong, I blamed myself entirely. Victoria noticed this. One day, she called me into her office and said something I'll never forget. "Sarah, you need to stop waiting for permission to be brilliant. You already are. Everyone else sees it. The question is, when are you going to see it in yourself?" It took me a while. But I'm seeing it now. I've built a team that I'm genuinely proud of. Priya is now a senior designer leading her own projects. Deshawn has become our go-to person for innovative problem solving. Yuki, who was so quiet in that first meeting, is now confident and vocal about her ideas. We've hired 5 new designers in the past year, and they're thriving because we've created an environment where ideas are valued, where failure is seen as part of the learning process, and where people aren't made to feel small. That's the opposite of what Derek created. I've also reconnected with my mother. I know that might sound strange in a story about career success, but it's connected. My mother and I had been estranged for years. Part of that was her, but a lot of it was me. I'd internalized some of Derek's treatment. I'd started to believe that I wasn't worthy of good relationships, that I should accept crumbs of appreciation and be grateful for them. When I started standing up for myself professionally, something shifted in me personally too. I called my mother and told her I wanted to try again. We're still working through things, but we're talking, we're trying, and that matters. I haven't seen Derek since I left Innovate Labs. I heard through Marcus that he found a job at another company. But I don't follow his career or think about him much anymore. I used to rehearse conversations in my head, moments where I'd explain everything he'd done wrong, where he'd finally understand how much he'd hurt me. But I don't do that anymore. I realize that Derek's understanding or lack thereof has nothing to do with my worth. My worth isn't determined by whether he sees it. The other day, I was in a meeting with Victoria and some investors, and one of them asked me how I'd gotten to this point so quickly. They wanted to know the secret, the magic formula for going from overlooked designer to industry leader in 2 years. I told them the truth. I stopped asking for permission. I stopped waiting for someone else to validate my ideas before I believed in them. I stopped making myself smaller to make other people comfortable. Free, and I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. But I also told them something else. And I had someone believe in me when I didn't believe in myself. Victoria took a chance on me based on a moment in a conference room. That moment could have gone a different way. If she hadn't asked for my contact, if I hadn't given her my card, if she hadn't sent that email, everything would be different. So while I credit my own work and my own choices, I also recognize that luck and timing and other people's faith in us matter. They matter a lot. Victoria smiled when I said that. Here's what I want you to know if you're listening to this story. If you're in a situation where someone is making you feel small, where your work isn't being valued, where you're constantly doubting yourself, that's not normal. That's not how work should feel. You deserve better. It might not come in the form of a Victoria Chen offering you a new job, but it will come in the form of opportunities if you're brave enough to reach for them. It will come in the form of people who see your value if you're willing to show it. It will come in the form of a new chapter if you're willing to close the old one. The hardest part isn't the leaving. It's the believing that you deserve something better in the first place. I spent so long believing that Derek's treatment of me was somehow my fault. That I'd somehow earned his cruelty through not being good enough. It took someone else seeing my talent for me to start questioning that narrative. But eventually, I stopped needing external validation. I started knowing, actually knowing, not just hoping, that my work mattered and that I was capable. That knowledge changed everything. 2 weeks ago, I was invited to speak at a design conference. I was on a panel with 3 other designers, all of them from bigger companies, all of them with more experience than me. I was nervous. I kept thinking about Derek. About how he would probably say I didn't deserve to be there, that I was a fraud, that I'd somehow tricked my way into relevance. But then I remembered something. Derek's opinion of me has no bearing on my actual capabilities. I gave that talk, and it was good. People came up to me afterward and told me that what I'd said mattered to them, that my story mattered to them, that my perspective on design was valuable. One woman in particular came up to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm in a situation like you were," she said. "My manager is destroying my work, stealing my ideas, making me feel like I'm not good enough. Listening to you talk about standing up for yourself, it gave me permission to do the same thing. Thank you." I hugged her, and I realized that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was becoming a story that other people could see themselves in. It was becoming proof that change is possible. That standing up for yourself is worth it, that you don't have to stay in a situation that diminishes you. If you're listening to this right now, and you're in that situation, if you're being made to feel small by someone who should be lifting you up, I want you to know you are valuable. Your work matters. Your voice deserves to be heard, and you don't have to accept cruelty as the price of employment or success or anything else. The hardest part is believing that. The rest is just logistics. I'm grateful for every part of this journey, even the painful parts, even Derek, because Derek taught me what I don't want to be. He taught me that real leadership isn't about making yourself bigger by making others smaller. It's about creating space for people to grow. That's what I'm trying to do now at NextGen. That's what I hope to keep doing for the rest of my career. And it all started with a broken prototype, a moment of courage, and a business card handed to someone who actually saw me. Sometimes that's all it takes, one person seeing you clearly, one moment of bravery, one decision that everything is about to change. If you're waiting for that moment, I want you to know it's coming. And when it does, I hope you'll be brave enough to take it. A year has passed since I gave that talk at the design conference. A year of watching my career grow in ways I never imagined possible. But more importantly, a year of watching other people's careers grow, because of choices I made and stories I shared. The woman I met at the conference, her name was Lisa, reached out to me 6 months later. She'd left her job, found a new position at a company that actually valued her and was thriving. She sent me a photo of herself at her new desk with a message. "I wouldn't have had the courage to leave without hearing your story. Thank you for showing me it was possible." That message changed something in me. I realized that my pain, my struggle, my victory, it wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who needed to know that change was possible. I started mentoring junior designers. I started speaking at more conferences. I started being intentional about lifting up other people in the way that Victoria had lifted me up. Because I understand now that when someone gives you an opportunity, you have a responsibility to create opportunities for others. Victoria and I have become close friends. She's become a mentor to me in ways that go beyond just business. Last month, she told me something that surprised me. "Derek reached out to me," she said. My stomach dropped. "What did he want?" "He wanted to apologize," Victoria said. "He said he'd spent the past 2 years understanding what he'd done wrong. He said watching your success and watching how you handled the situation with grace instead of vindictiveness had made him reckon with himself." I didn't know how to feel about that. "Did you tell him anything?" I asked. "I told him that apologies are good, but actions are better," Victoria said. "I told him that if he was serious about change, he needed to examine his patterns, maybe get some help understanding why he felt so threatened by talented people. I told him that you probably wouldn't want to hear from him, and that he needed to respect that." I asked her if she knew what he was doing now. "He's working as an individual contributor at a smaller company," she said. "No management responsibilities. I think he's finally understanding that leadership wasn't his strength." I felt something shift in me when I heard that. Not satisfaction, not vindication, but something more like peace. Derek wasn't my problem anymore. His journey toward understanding himself wasn't my responsibility. All I could do was make sure I didn't become him. 6 months ago, I was offered a position to lead design for an entire tech company, a C-suite role. It was a massive opportunity, the kind of thing that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. I turned it down. Victoria was surprised. "Why?" she asked. "Because I'm not ready," I said honestly, "and more importantly, because I like what I'm building here. I like the team we've created. I like having time to mentor people. I like the balance I've found. A bigger title and a bigger salary aren't worth sacrificing that." Victoria nodded. "That's the most mature decision I've ever heard you make," she said. "But I also started my own consulting practice on the side. 1 day a week. I work with companies and individuals who are struggling with design challenges. One of my clients is a young designer at a startup. She reminds me so much of myself 2 years ago. Talented, undervalued, wondering if she's good enough. I'm teaching her what I've learned, that her worth isn't determined by anyone else's opinion, that standing up for herself is not selfish, that she deserves to work in an environment where her contributions are valued." Last week, she told me she was going to ask for a promotion and a raise. Her hands were shaking when she told me, but her voice was steady. "What if they say no?" she asked. "Then you'll know that company isn't the right place for you," I said. "And you'll find somewhere that is. But you have to ask. You have to believe you deserve it." She did ask. "They said yes." I cried when she told me. 2 years ago, I was standing in a conference room with broken prototype pieces on the floor and a manager who was trying to diminish me. I was 32 years old, and I still didn't know how to stand up for myself. Now I'm 34, and I'm helping other people find their voices. The other day Marcus called me. He's not at Innovate Labs anymore. He left about a year ago and started his own design firm. He's doing incredible work. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "You know that? When you stood up to Derek, when you left, when you started succeeding, it gave me permission to believe I could do more too. I was stuck in that place because I was comfortable, but comfortable wasn't happy. You showed me that I didn't have to choose between the two." "You would have figured it out," I said. "Maybe," Marcus said. "But having someone I respected model that courage, that mattered. It mattered a lot. I think that's what this story is really about. It's not about my triumph over Derek or my success at NextGen. Those things matter, but they're not the heart of it. The heart of it is this: when you decide your own worth is not negotiable, when you refuse to let someone else's fear or insecurity become your ceiling. When you choose to stand up even though you're terrified, that creates ripples. Other people see that choice, and it gives them permission to make similar choices. Other people see that standing up for yourself doesn't result in complete disaster, and it gives them courage. Other people see that there's life on the other side of fear, and it gives them hope. That's the legacy I want to leave behind. Not money, not titles, not accolades, though those things are nice. I want to leave behind a trail of people who believed in themselves because someone else believed in them first. Victoria believed in me. Now I'm trying to believe in other people the way she believed in me. A few months ago, I got a call from someone at Innovate Labs. They were doing an exit interview with Derek. And during the conversation, he mentioned me. He said something along the lines of, "The worst mistake I made was not seeing Sarah's talent. I destroyed someone who could have helped me build something great, and instead I ended up destroying myself." I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is. I hope Derek learned something. I hope he's becoming a better person. Not for my sake, but for the sake of anyone who ever has to work for him again. But more than that, I hope my story reaches people who are where I was. People who are being made small. People who are questioning whether they deserve better. People who are terrified of change, but more terrified of staying the same. I want to tell you, you deserve better. Not because you're special or because you have some unique talent, though you might. You deserve better because you're a human being, and human beings deserve to be valued. You deserve to work in an environment where your contributions matter. You deserve to have a manager who lifts you up instead of tearing you down. You deserve to believe in yourself, and if you can't believe in yourself yet, if you're still stuck in that place where Derek's voice in your head is louder than your own voice, then let me believe for you. Let me tell you, you are valuable, your work matters, your voice deserves to be heard. The first step is believing that. The second step is acting on it. I took both of those steps 2 years ago in a conference room, and my life has never been the same. I'm grateful for all of it, even the hard parts, even Derek. Because Derek taught me what I never want to become. And that lesson, that understanding, is worth more than any title or salary ever could be. If you're listening to this, and you're thinking about making a change, about standing up for yourself, about believing that you deserve better, I want you to know the time is now. Not someday, not when you feel more confident, not when you have a backup plan. Now. Because life is too short to spend it being made small by someone else's fear. Take your business card. Hand it to whoever needs to see it. Be brave enough to believe in yourself. And then, once you're standing in your own light, help someone else find theirs. That's how we change things. That's how we create workplaces and communities, and lives where people actually flourish instead of just survive. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me through all of it, and thank you for being brave enough to consider that maybe, just maybe, you deserve better too. You do, I promise you do.